Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the One and O podcast. I'm Avery Hill.
I'm Lexi Linderman.
And I'm Lyle Allenstein.
Today, we're going to touch on the hot topic of the off season. Then, we're going to go into a future possible commit, and we're going to wrap up with the recent summer arrivals. To start, again, hot topic of the off season has been Penn State's Natty or Bust tag. Lexi, I know at psucollegian.com, you wrote a little bit about it. It drew some mixed opinions. Obviously, off of last season, Penn State going to the Orange Bowl, the college football playoff semifinal. A lot of people are calling it Natty or Bust. You called it Natty or Bust. Why do you think that? And what do you think will happen if Penn State is not able to come home with the national championship?
I think it's Natty or bust just because of all the resources they've put into making this 2025 roster the best that they think it can be. I think they obviously threw a ton of money at Jim Knowles, and obviously they have him for a couple of years, but they wanted to go out and get the best defensive coordinator on the market, and they did just that. They reeled him in from one of their rivals, Ohio State. I think then you add that they brought in three transfer wide receivers. I mean, the wide receiver room has been a problem for a couple of years, and you've never seen them go to these lengths to bring in reinforcements. I mean, you have three starters. We kind of talked about this when Trevor Pena first transferred. But yeah, so they brought in all three of those guys. They were very adamant that there was a hole at linebacker. They went and got Maurar Campbell. They just they're seeing the holes and they're filling them. And I just think all that they've done to not only get all those guys, but also bring all the other guys back. I mean, it's hard to convince guys like Denai Dennis Sutton and maybe even Ziki Wheatley and Zane Durant, who would have been drafted in the NFL draft, to come back and chase a natty, but they all did. Even Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, both of them came back. Nick Singleton said in his first media availability since the Orange Bowl that he came back chasing national championship. They all basically said same thing. They're all back for a reason. So for all those reasons, I think if they don't win a national championship, it just seems like a failure all in all.
Yeah, I think on paper, you look at the roster, bringing in Jim Knowles, Stan Drayton, who before he became a head coach at Temple was arguably the best running backs coach in college football. James Franklin talks about the alignment, the administration. I think you point out all these things and you're like, it makes sense for it to be Natty or bust. But I think it's kind of hard to look at it that way because you look at last season and they're a Drew Aller interception and a Steve Angeli playing lights out football for Notre Dame for a drive away from the national championship. And you're looking at that without Jim Knowles. You're looking at that without a bunch of NIL poured into transfer portal wide receivers. They did that in a game where Notre Dame had zero catches. I mean, Notre Dame forced Penn State's wide receivers to have zero catches. And it's like, you look at all the resources and investment on paper, it's like, yes, it's national championship or bust. But at the same time, if you compare it to like other programs that have had this kind of investment, this kind of caliber of roster, you look at the Ohio States, the Georgias, the Alabamas, it's like they have this kind of investment every single year, every single season. And it's not like they're constantly making the championship, right? It's like they're kind of putting themselves in that conversation. But it's like you look at what Alabama did last year, obviously, Grant, this past season, obviously it's new head coach, right? But it's like they were on the brink of college football playoff. Like there could have been the argument that you put them in just because they're playing SEC competition. So it's like, I think it's kind of hard. And it's like the first season you're getting this kind of investment, the kind of resources. All the pieces are there, but can they put it together? It's like, I don't really think they've ever kind of been in this position before. So I don't really, national championship or bust is kind of a hard way for me to look at it. But if they don't make the semifinal, then I think it's a bust. But it's like, because if you see consistency from Penn State following this year, and then I think if you revisit this, have this conversation with the same kind of roster, then I think it'd be a bust. But
Yeah, I think there's really two sides as you can take to this because obviously you also have to define what do you consider bust? Like is bust you didn't win the national championship and it's a failure, yes, but is everybody getting fired? Like obviously is James Franklin like is everybody at his house with pitchforks? Like you have to like figure out what bust means. Like sometimes it gets a little overstated, but I think for me, natty or bust really means like they're putting all the chips in. There is no guarantee that Penn State is able to stay at this level given the amount of investment into this season. I mean, you talk about bringing back Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. You talk about bringing back Denai Dennis Sutton. You talk about even Zane Durant coming back for another year, which if the program was maybe at a different state, maybe he leaves. And of course, same thing with Nick Singleton, Drew Aller. Like the list goes on and on. Getting guys that maybe coaches at some head coaches at some point in their career, and Stan Drayton, he might end up going back at some point. Maybe he turns Nick Singleton into Saquon Barkley, like people would hope for him to do. It's very interesting to see how that'll all shape out. But I do think it could be kind of considered as like Natty or bust, just in the sense that if Penn State is not able to win a national championship this year, like expectations are where for next season and the season after that, because you're going to have to retool. Obviously, Penn State's been able to develop, but last season was the best Penn State ever was. And I would argue the last 10, 15, or really in the James Franklin era. So it having these pieces back and seeing how they roll into the next year, if once they leave, the guys that develop will obviously kind of determine that, which is obviously something that's I'm blanking on the word, but it's just something that you're going to really realize after the fact. Like, say Penn State doesn't win the national championship, you get to 2020. What's next year? 2026? Yeah, there
Yeah.
we go. There we go. Losing track and getting a little old, y'all. But if you go to 2026 and you see that Penn State is just kind of back to, like, I guess 10 wins, like we know what's coming, no big wins, things like that, then it's like they might have spoiled their chance, or even 9 wins. But I definitely do agree from Lyle's standpoint that if they can't get back to the college football playoff semifinal, it's a bust. I think it'll be very interesting to see how they're able to do that.
Well, yeah, I also think the other thing, like it being Natty or bust, is like Aid Kotelnicki like could have had the West Virginia coaching job and decided to stay. And like there's no guarantee that like he doesn't
Good
leave
point.
after next season. Just because like he's going to be a head coach at some point in his career, and that could be next season. And some Penn State's looking for an offensive coordinator. Obviously, Dreller's gone. You got to replace him. Ethan Grunkemeyer looks to be the next man up. But like, is he capable of like taking Penn State that far? Like, I don't know. And so it's just like things like that I just think like the entire roster is going to look completely different next year. And it's like, yeah, they develop all the time. But yeah, I think this is like the best roster James Franklin might have in like not like recent years, but like upcoming years, I guess. Yeah, upcoming years.
For the
Um,
foreseeable future.
yeah, for the foreseeable
There
future.
you go.
And so just like for that, I think like if he can't get this one done, like I don't know. Like I don't know if he ever can. Like
I think the Kolnicki thing is kind of hard to look at because from like I think he didn't take the West Virginia job because he would have had to leave during the playoff run, which I think in any sport in any situation is just stupid. Like if you want your guy, like
Steve Sarkisian did it,
it's a good point actually.
saying him leaving the University of Alabama, like one of the greatest programs ever,
True. And
was stupid.
The Duke
I agree.
assistant basketball coach did that too this year. Went to Miami, but anyway. But it's just like
There you go.
because Jim Knowles gets all this hype and for good reason, right? He's arguably, I'll say he's the best defensive coordinator in college football in the last 4, 5 years, whatever. But you have to remember, we've had this conversation a few times. Can he take that defense to be that next elite, whatever? Penn State's defense under James Franklin has always been consistent, top 10 in the country, right? So it's like whether it's Tom Allen, Brent Pry, Manny Diaz, Bob Shoop, whatever. I mean, that was more Vanderbilt, but it's like the defense, how much better can it get? They've already consistently churning out talent. So I don't really know if like I think the Knowles hire isn't more so when you talk about going all in. I think it's more so getting him away from Ohio State. I don't necessarily it's like the production thing. But if you Avery, you brought up the pitchforks to James Franklin, like if they lose the national if they don't win the national championship, like he's not going anywhere. Like James Franklin has arguably of competitive Power Four programs the safest job in college football because he wins every single game that he needs to. He doesn't like of like games that he's a favorite, whatever. But like he can't win the big ones, whatever. But it's like sometimes you just run into Ohio State and Michigan on your schedule for several years in a row.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes, but it's just like nothing's really going to change. There's going to be some roster turnover. Kolnicki's probably gone, but the investment's going to be here for the foreseeable future under Pat Kraft. NIL over the last year between Happy Valley United, it's taken a massive step forward, and it's not like they're going to change, right? They come up short this year. Like that same effort is going to be in money and investment is going to be poured right back into the program. You know, we got the whole no more Sandy Barber. Here comes Pat Kraft, and it's changing. I mean, you can look at all the other athletic programs and other than like both the basketball teams, and like every single program is, you know, they're producing, right? So it's just like I don't know. I really don't think like it's going to make a difference if they're all in or not if they win. But
Yeah, I mean, did you say James Franklin has the safest job in the country?
one of them, yeah,
Oh, okay. I'm just saying because I don't know about safest because again, like running into Ohio
one of
State and
them, one of
Michigan.
them.
Because I mean that's sports though. Like you'll get faulted for running into a team that you have no control over running into. I mean, you look at when Michigan kept losing to Ohio State, like it's like you can't keep losing to Ohio State, and same vice versa. Obviously, Ryan Day, like a national championship, obviously solves everything, which is like the one thing that I think would make James Franklin have the most secure job in the country because you've seen the growth, especially like coming from the sanctions and everything to get to that point. So I think it'll be very interesting. But the only thing that I think does come into a factor at some point, I don't think right now, but at some point like say he gets to year 20 and there's no national championship, like there's they maybe they don't get back to the college football playoff semifinal. That is when it comes to time where it's like, oh, he's developing these guys, they're doing this, they're doing that, but they haven't hit that peak. But obviously that's like a while from now. Like I'll probably have gray hair by the time that happens. Might be having a little cane or whatever,
I'm already balding,
flagged
Yeah,
so
I
out.
was gonna say Lau might be bald by then, so
So that'll be just something from the future. But I will say, like transitioning into the future, it'll be interesting to see how they're not able to develop recruits, but recruit. Obviously, we've seen the recent recruiting run. Last week we had a big week to kind of see the first official visits of the, I guess, summer session, if you called that. One being Joey O'Brien, the number two player in Pennsylvania for the class of 2026, number 65 player in the country. He's listed as a composite 4 star, but being number 65 in the country, there's obviously a chance that he goes up to 5 star status. He's drawn a lot of buzz. 6'3", 198 pounds. Um, how important would it be for Penn State to secure Joey O'Brien, in-state player?
yeah, he's a really good player. You can make the argument he is the top player on Penn State's board. Like he's a take no matter what. I think he's had a conversation with James Franklin that was reported where they're recruiting him to play both sides of the ball, which is always an interesting thing to look at. Obviously, you look at Travis Hunter. Obviously, that's kind of an unfair comparison. But then Syracuse has a freshman this year. I'm totally blanking on his name, who's going to be doing the same thing. So I think that's always an interesting recruiting pitch.
Ryan Anthony?
Enjoy, what?
Ryan Anthony?
Yeah, I think.
Got it. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Shout out to Tom Allen from Syracuse. But I think it's kind of hard. Like, because Joey O'Brien is he's a nationally sought after. I think the race right now is between Oregon and Notre Dame and Penn State. I know you've got Clemson, I think, and Michigan also in the mix, but he's a really good player. I think it's kind of tough for Penn State to have him the first official visit weekend because you could set the tone, but when you in a close race, you kind of want to be toward the back because he doesn't seem like the kind of kid that's going to end his recruitment early. I don't think he has a official like announcement date yet. So, but like you always want best in Pennsylvania, stay in Pennsylvania, whatever. And that's the whole. They've been recruiting very well in Pennsylvania this cycle, but not only is he a Pennsylvania player, but he's a top player nationally. So that just kind of is an added bonus. Obviously, he plays for LaSalle College High School, where Abdul went. That's a nice little recruiting pitch there. You see Abdul going 3 in the draft. Yeah, we could turn you into that too, right? But I don't know. I think
Right.
he's probably like a take no matter what. He is the top guy, so it's a really important guy to land.
yeah, I also think you mentioned like the success in Pennsylvania this cycle. If they land Joey O'Brien, they will have 5 of the top 6 recruits in Pennsylvania for this cycle, which I think like this past cycle, they like did pretty well in Pennsylvania, but not what I think fans are used to seeing. And so I think getting that kind of dominance back would be just huge for the program going forward, especially as they look to retool and everything. But yeah, I think definitely would just be a huge get for Penn State. I mean, you want to keep the in-state guys and stay basically just like what Lyle said. Yeah, but I just think the Pennsylvania dominance going forward is just gonna be super important. And so I think getting Joey O'Brien really sets that tone and also just brings him like a super great player to have for years to come.
Yeah, it kind of brings me back to our previous topic because it's like to retain this, I would consider dominance, especially in comparison to previous Penn State seasons. you're going to have to, again, recruit. You're going to have to bring in guys like that. And bringing in Joey O'Brien, like obviously bringing in any 4-star you can consider a splash. But bringing in Joey O'Brien seems like an absolute splash. Like I've seen like Justin Simmons comparisons. Again, everyone's kind of like absolutely falling in love with this guy. It's like, oh, he's got to come to Penn State. Like there's no, like again, has Notre Dame on the board. Has what Clemson, Michigan, schools like that on the board. So we'll kind of see how that shapes out. But I definitely think it'll be very interesting to see where he lands and how Penn State's able to pitch him because I think the biggest part of this, and this is something like Lau, like you mentioned, and something I literally just mentioned to Lexi, like right before the podcast started. His visit date matters. Like when I play college football 25, it matters because you'll get. I'll schedule somebody for a visit in week 6. We get to week 14. All of a sudden, Oregon wants to meet my guy, my 5-star, in fact. Angel Thorpe to be exact. But they want to meet my guy and take him away from Old Dominion. That is the same thing that other schools are going to try to do. You get the first impression, that might not be the best impression. And even if it is the best impression, maybe the timing. Like you have recency bias. I just visited this school. It felt really good. Penn State felt really good too, but this was a month ago. I know some of his visits are scheduled for like mid-June, late June. So he's going to have to go through all of these different programs and then James Franklin's gonna be like, all right, come on back, stay in PA. Like, we got to get you, and it's not going to be that easy. I don't know exactly how they, kind of schedule these visits, but I would have thought that they would prefer to have him maybe at least midway through the cycle or late. But maybe James Franklin's that confident. Maybe he's just like, I got this guy locked down. I mean, adding him to the safeties room could be pretty big. I mean, you're looking at the turnover now, shifting from Kevin Winston Jr., Jalen Reed, Zachary Wheatley after this season. You're going to have some guys step up. Obviously, you have Dejon Lane, and you're going to have the other guys under them trying to step up. But he is a guy that honestly could be in a guy that green lights his freshman year, gets out there, plays, and has a great 3 years and goes what first, second round, something like that. Like, and him working with Anthony Poindexter, it seems perfect. So we'll kind of see how that all shapes out.
Yeah, but I think you brought up a good point with your time about college football guys trying to flip, right? But you look at, I don't think he has an official like commitment date set yet, so this could push after OV's end. He could end up really easy for him to come up for an unofficial, right? Like you're in state, but Penn State, when you look at the last cycle, like when they were kind of struggling to get in-state guys, they flipped Cam Smith from St. Joe's from Duke, and then you flip Andrew Olish after National Signing Day. And those are 2 top 10 players in Pennsylvania. So regardless of where he goes, this recruitment's like not going to be over like in the slightest. So, but that's the same thing for other schools. Like they're going to try to push him away. I feel like it was this time last year that DJ McClary flipped from Penn State to Rutgers. And like that's a New Jersey kid. So it's also just like the in-state poll, it's easy. I think he kind of took a visit during his official, despite being committed to Penn State. And he's like, all right, yeah, I'm going to go here. So it's like you see it all the time with just the in-state attraction, right? Like sometimes you want to play close to home, but so and obviously Joey O'Brien's recruitment is national, so that's another thing. It's like kind of harder in the middle of your season next year to go schedule an unofficial visit to Oregon, right? So it's just like wherever he goes, despite the recruitment's not going to be over.
Um, are there any other guys you guys think are like should be who's number 2 on the board? Who's number 3? Let's keep it simple like that. Anybody specific?
From this weekend or no?
Yeah, from this weekend. I mean, if you have somebody else that's just way more important, cool.
Yeah, well, I think Kari Adams, the cornerback from Maryland, another top 100 guy. I just another take no matter what. Obviously, Penn State's got I think 2 corners on board right now, Julian Peterson, and then David Davis, who's an athlete. I think he's going to play cornerback or safety. But another top 100 guy. He canceled another official visit to move it up to Penn State. I think because I think he's got a couple of crystal balls from 247 in right now, and I also think he wanted to hang out with Joey O'Brien. Like I think that was part of it. So I don't know. I think that's another top guy. Terry Smith and Anthony Poindexter in the secondary have done really well. A lot of people they were pretty high on Kari Adams before he kind of blew up nationally, And I think those are arguably the two top overall guys on Penn State sports. So that's another guy that I'm going to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I also think Sincere Johnson, another top 100 guy, number 2 player in Ohio. Penn State's in his top 4. I think that could be a huge get. Just like you just want to have like they already have one of the best classes in 2025, but or 2026, sorry. They just want to keep just reloading that. I think just continuing to get all these top guys and like pull them from Ohio and say obviously school is Ohio State, like that would just be a big get for James Franklin.
Yeah. Well, we'll all kind of see how that shapes out. Again, Joey O'Brien may end up getting to 5-star status. Is probably pretty clearly the number one guy on Penn State's board. But now I kind of want to shift into the players that are already there or have just arrived. Penn State updated his roster with the summer arrivals. Who stands out? Who's just interesting? Whether they'll develop in their development or who will be ready right now.
I think I'm kind of intrigued by the fact that Trevor Pena and Amari Campbell are actually there. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, they got their two transfers that are there in there. Obviously, the big pickups. You get that third wide receiver, and you address James Franklin's comments of filling a hole at linebacker. Makes Tony Rojas really, really happy. But I think the two members of the 2025 class that I'm kind of intrigued by. Number one, Malachi Goodman, 6'6". I think they listed him at 310. I think he's a 5-star by On3, but he composite 4-star. But I think he's a top 2 or 3 highest rated guy in the class, depending what recruiting service you're looking at. I think he's as I saw him when we were at Blue White game when we were like obviously by the field, watching warm ups and stuff. I thought he physically could have suited up like right then and there. Um, Really impressive target. I mean tackle. That room is so loaded, right? We talk about Drew Shelton's got the left tackle job locked up. Right tackle, you've had Rucci and Donko rotating. Obviously, they're both Rucci. We saw in the final viewing session of spring practice. He didn't play in the blue white game, so he's probably just recovering. Donko, we still haven't seen since I want to say it was a Minnesota game he got hurt. But
Yeah.
so it's just like they're deep, right? You could end up seeing one of those guys end up playing right guard. Like they've got position flexibility. I would not be surprised if Cooper Cousins is like the swing guy. Um, but I still think Cooper Cousins is a shoe in for right guard, and despite that comment, because I just don't know Anthony Donko's status right now. And then you got Javen Williams, who's been playing a ton, Egan Boyer, Alex Birchmeier. So it's a loaded offensive line room. But I think Malachi Goodman, if he could do some things, I think he's in the conversation for the 2 deep. Obviously, you're getting to campus in May or whatever, so I don't want to call it a setback, but it's not necessarily an advantage. So that's one guy. And then the other guy is Cortez, not wrong defensive end, Chaz Coleman, 4-star athlete, but he's going to be defensive end, I think, from Ohio. Really late riser in the recruiting process. He kind of shot up now the boards nationally, and he got an Ohio State offer really late after already being committed to Penn State. And Ohio State was trying to get him to flip. They tried to get him on campus for a visit late in the year. Penn State was able to get him to hold off. And I think that says something with Ohio State trying to get an Ohio kid late in the cycle like that and pulling away from Penn State. I mean, you saw the same thing with Drew Aller, right? Completely different. But it's like, I think he's a kind of a freak athlete. He's got some great basketball tape, which we've noticed translates a lot to, the football field. Tyler Warren is going to be the example that I'm going to pull. But I don't know. Those are 2 guys I'm kind of intrigued by.
I would say the top guy I'm intrigued by is Jeff Exnor Jr. He was a tight end, I think, on his recruiting profile, but I think he's going to play wide receiver at Penn State. I think that's super intriguing, super interesting. Big bodied guy, obviously, if you're playing tight end in high school. And I think the true freshman wide receivers in the spring were really impressive. I think Kobe Howard caught a lot of attention. I mean, he posted that TikTok video that like everyone is like has seen and has been like, oh wow, this guy might be legit. And then like Matt Allen was just like a physical like dude, like he was just huge. So I think the true freshman wide receivers were impressing, and I think Jeff Exmore Jr. has the capability to also be impressive this summer. I think he was a guy that I think a lot of the recruiting staff was really high on National Signing Day when we talked to them. And so I think it'll just be interesting to see how he does this summer. Then I'm also intrigued by Jameer Joseph, the cornerback. I think 4-star recruit. I think he has the potential to be super good. I forget what they listed him on the roster as, like weight wise, but I think needs to add a little bit of weight. But yeah, I think those are the 2 guys that stand out to me. Just like, and obviously Malachi Goodman, like Lyle said, just huge guy. Like looks like, yeah.
Large human.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like y'all said, I think Exanor and Malachi Goodman are like the top two guys from my view. I remember when Exanor first committed to Penn State, kind of watching him, and he really gave me like I think he was listed as an athlete at that time. I don't know what prompted that change to tight end, but I know he's two-sport athlete, plays basketball. I don't know, did he do track too? I don't know. He's two-sport athlete. We're just gonna stick with that. If I'm wrong, oh well. But two-sport athlete, basketball, football, you see that all the time, which is obviously probably where the tight end side came from. But played a good amount of like receiver at McDonough, which obviously has brought plenty of Penn State products, including new Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Devontae Thomas, um, and Deni Dennis Sutton, just to name a couple. But I saw him as this potential as an X receiver. Like he's listed at what? I don't know what Penn State listed him as, but I know recruiting services have him at about 6'2", 220, which is a pretty big receiver. Like you get to 220 and it's like you need to be like that, like Julio Jones type of build. Like, where's Malcolm Butler? Like, I need the ball. Like, give me the ball. Like, he has potential as an X receiver. Like, we'll see how his skills develop in at the new level. But I do think that with his size and his traits, he definitely has a chance to be a big playmaker with Penn State. In terms of Goodman, I think that he has a chance at in many other programs he might have even already been there and started. But Penn State's defensive line is deep. I mean, offensive line is deep. Um, Trout Wayne has not only developed guys, but he's bringing back so many guys. You look at having Nick Dawkins, Cooper Cousins, Vega Awane, having Drew Shelton, Anthony Donko, and Nolan Rucci hurt. As you mentioned, Javen Williams, like it really didn't really make sense to have him, in the spot that he could potentially play. But I think his development would be really big to watch for. Do you think any of these guys? Do y'all think any of these guys had the chance to play maybe this season? Like kind of like even if it's like a Max Granville type of thing, like when we need him, he's there. Like anybody that kind of pops out in that realm.
Well, speaking of Max Granville, we could talk about Daniel Jennings.
Yeah.
It's number one recruit in West Virginia in 2026, reclassified at 225. Whoa, 2025. He didn't reclassify his weight. But yeah, just like Max Granville last summer, defensive end, enrolling early. He's listed at 250.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, if he's at 250 and he's eating eggs,
Yeah, raw.
Right.
But or no, hard boiled, not raw
I was
eggs.
gonna say
That
what?
was, that was a complete miss. I like eggs too, so that kind of hurts me a lot. But I think, yeah, like if you're putting on, I think you put on 25 pounds from what he was listed on his high school roster page, um, something like that. Max, he weighs 15 pounds more than what Max Granville did when he came to campus. So if you can, like, not necessarily like contribute right away is hard, but if he can, I think he could have a Max Granville like role if this is what he physically looks like and he is enrolling early. Like we saw at Max Granville that viewing session of practice during local media day when he'd been on campus for like 3 days, maybe, and it physically didn't look like he was a senior in high school. So if Daniel Jennings weighs 25 pounds more, I'm pretty sure the first time we see him, we're all going to say the same thing. So, but like contribute right away doesn't necessarily mean burns the red shirt. I really don't think a lot of these guys in the 2025 class are going to burn the red shirt. I think off the top of my head, I think Darius Dixon realistically is probably the only one, barring any injuries. Like I didn't think Luke Reynolds was going to burn red shirt last year if Rappleyea didn't get hurt. So that's the kind of same thing. If Rappleyea doesn't see the field, maybe Andrew Illich has burned the red shirt. So obviously a lot of these things depend on injuries, but Daniel Jennings can do what Max Granville did. Max Granville stepped in for Abdul when he got hurt in the Fiesta Bowl, and he played some good snaps that were meaningful, right? You can't just show up as a guy who's supposed to be senior in high school and stop Ashton Genty. And obviously, he didn't fully stop Ashton Genty himself, but like they wouldn't have trusted him out there in a meaningful situation in a game to go to the college semifinals. So I think Jennings he's one of two guys right now that aren't actually on the roster in the 2025 class. I think it's him and Jabri Wallace Coleman from Imhotep. Imhotep always like gets out of high school. Like I think Kenny Woosley was the last guy to enroll last year. So I don't know. I'm intrigued to see Daniel Jennings. 250, like, is he gonna play D tackle? Because I don't really know. Because they've got 5 defensive ends in that class, and they've got one In 2025 was Randy Adarica. So I don't know. We'll see.
You mean
There's
at
position
250
flexibility.
though? Like, what do you see him
What?
as like the like? Because I mean, obviously, this is an edge right now. Like, what do you see
The
him like?
250 obviously is like
Is there type of
undersized.
thing like has a chance to play edge in college, like something like that? Like, I mean, it'll be interesting to see like, if 250 is accurate.
That's
Like,
fair.
we've like the combine exposes a lot, like a lot. So obviously he could be there, he could not be there. I don't see what the benefit of putting him at 250 going into college is. He could have been eating those eggs. Like the thing, like even if you're not a summer arrival, it's not like Penn State isn't you obviously keeping them together the whole time. Like usually they get their own workouts. They have the things they need to do. Like obviously they don't have Chuck Losey and the strength staff right there, but they're still like they know where they need to be by the time they arrive in the summer. Obviously they don't get as much as the guys in the spring because they get that actual pads on experience. Like they're not even putting the pads on for their own high school during the spring, and their guys are able to get an extra session in. But I don't think it overall has a big impact on recruiting. But yeah, if that 250 is 250, it'll be interesting to see like is that where he stays at? Like is he 250 and like maybe straight muscle? Like what are we doing with that? Because if he keeps going up, like yes, he's got to move inside. Like unless he's like denied in Sutton, but he's not 6'6",
He also
whatever.
plays running back.
So Vita
So
Vea,
like
is that where
I
we're
don't
getting
know.
at? Vita Vea, like
Yeah, like a little fullback pack. Actually, it's Cooper Cousins' role. Just kidding. But I don't know. If you're putting on 25 pounds since your high school football season ends without Chuck Losey, like what's stopping you from doing it again?
that's a fair point. I give you that.
I don't know. We'll see. I'm trying to think of like physically what is he, 6'2", 250? Like maybe like Jalen Harvey. I don't even know. 44. Jalen Harvey, 6'2", 246. Look at that pull. Wow. I don't know. We'll see where it translates. We also don't even know when he's getting on campus. So we'll see.
Well, that's all we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. For more coverage, visit us at psucollegian.com or follow us on socials. We'll see you next time.